Why do you think she's using her HRH title, albeit in a private letter, and clinging on to her Sussex name rather than Markle?
Well, it's clearly social capital. I mean, I think that I'm sure her PA, uses it to ensure that she gets that top table at a restaurant. I mean, it will have a huge weight in America to have that kudos of still having that sort of royal aura around her. And it is hypocritical in my I'm sure, I don't know, I'm just, surmising, but I'm sure she uses it a lot because it is something of value, particularly in the social circle she moves in. And Katie and I were talking beforehand about this sort of constant question about whether or not the sort of image, the brand, if you want, of sort of Harry and Meghan is still perceived in a totally different way than it is in the Commonwealth, and it probably isn't now. I mean, they've overstayed their welcome. But, on one level, you can't have sort of, tweaked all those emotional sort of triggers and then go back privately to continue doing it. It's not a great look in my estimation. I
think it just poses, or just off the back of what Mark's saying, just a bit of a hypocrisy element, a big issue over, well, you've attacked this institution many, many times, most recently in a podcast, which we've just heard this week, and yet you want to retain all of the perks and privileges of being in that institution, which is, of course, the titles, because I suppose if they are just Harry and Meghan Sussex, because that is her name. She's right to say she's not a Markle anymore. When you marry, most people take their husband's name, and that's what she's done. But she doesn't need to be using the HRH title. She doesn't really need to be using the Duchess of Sussex. But of course, that sets her aside from, everyone else, including top-list, A-list Hollywood celebrities. I just think that Andrew is, as you say, so toxic. I don't think there is any hope of a rehabilitation for him.
He is toxic. There's no way about it. And that, that interview was
a disaster.
The full stop. I mean, I think I described at the time it was like the equivalent of driving a clown car with a lit cigarette through a firework factory. It was just jaw-droppingly sort of deaf in terms of, and blind in some ways to things around you. And
yet we're 6 years on and it still hasn't recovered for Andrew. No. It's still, more...
No, because he keeps trying to edge his way back in.
He won't let go.
That's
in the same way that Harry and Meghan won't let go of those HRH titles. He just is clinging on. He needs to let go.
And as soon as you edge back in, it's a story.
Let's start with the ice cream scandal. Yes, really. Meghan Markle sent a gift basket to a friend, with a note signed using her former royal title, HRH the Duchess of Sussex. And royal commentators are not letting it slide. She stepped back from royal life, said no more titles, no more formality, yet here she is using the exact status she supposedly walked away from. Why? Because in Hollywood, status still sells. Meghan knows it. So does Harry. And according to this panel, they're not letting go of the royal perks anytime soon. And then there's Prince Andrew, still hoping for some sort of comeback, despite being labeled toxic by the media, and frankly the palace. It's been 6 years since that disastrous BBC interview, and yet he continues to edge his way back in, as they put it. Just like Harry and Meghan, Andrew's also clinging to what's left of his royal identity. But with zero public trust and no path to redemption, the idea of rehabilitation is laughable at this point.
I joined the Prince and Princess of Wales on their wedding anniversary, their 14th wedding anniversary. It wasn't weird. I wasn't in a room next to them with a cup by the wall or anything like that.
But well, they were in a very remote lodge, very deliberately.
They were in a very remote lodge.
As far away from the media as they could get.
It was really, really nice. And I just want to spend a little bit of time discussing some happiness. Because is it just nice to see two people clearly in love, clearly happy, having a whale of a time in a beautiful setting of the Isle of Mull?
Yeah, it's lovely. And I mean, Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember a time when they've done something public on their wedding anniversary in the past. I mean, they usually choose to celebrate it, understandably, privately. And then when they realised that, this trip fell over their wedding anniversary, apparently they said to their aides, we're happy to go ahead with it. And obviously, getting away together, going to Scotland, which is very significant to them because, of course, it's where they met at St Andrews. It's a place they love. I mean, I'm told that they've been up to Scotland quite a few times while Kate's been, in her period of remission. It's somewhere that's very special to both of them. And they look, well, you were with them, but everything we saw in terms of the footage and the images, they looked so happy together. And it was an important trip for Catherine. It was her first away trip since her cancer diagnosis. Hopefully we're going to see, more of her travelling around the country and possibly even further afield. She looked wonderful, she looked healthy, she looked happy. They looked very, very in love. And I think, when you look at them together, it's a really important image that for the royal family at a time when it's been through a huge amount of flux and turbulence, and we've got a king who's living with cancer. These two are they're the bright hope for the House of Windsor. Well, they're the promise of the future.
For me, it was the happiness. It was the kind of joy, the kind of excitement that they bring to the royal family and bring to engagements that some of the other royals... I mean, you look at some of the footage of Harry and Meghan, for instance, when they're abroad in Colombia or when they're in Canada or just recently in New York, seem a bit glum, seem a bit down. This couple just bring it every time, bring their A game. We're talking about the way they looked. Princess of Wales I think she had a lighter... a hair highlight, do I call it?
Yeah, she looked like she'd had a few highlights put in her hair, and I liked the fact that they were twinning in tweed and they're very deliberately sort of dressed down, hiking boots on, out in the forest, meeting communities and children benefiting from those communities. It just felt very very authentic and doing the sorts of things that they love to do.
Now compare all of that with this. William and Kate's anniversary tour in Scotland, low-key, modest and powerful. They looked happy, grounded and completely in their element. And for a royal family in turmoil, it's the exact kind of energy they need. While the Sussexes are pushing personal brands and curated Instagram moments, the Prince and Princess of Wales are meeting communities, supporting causes and, according to the press, just being real. This segment pulls no punches. There's a clear theme here. Authenticity matters. And right now, the Sussexes aren't delivering it. Meghan and Harry's public appearances feel rehearsed, performative, brand-oriented. Meanwhile, William and Kate are described as relatable, human, and, get this, actually happy. That's the real power move. Not titles. Not monograms. Just being present, visible, and real.
And that's exactly what I would say. We talked about the lack of authenticity, the artifice that surrounds Meghan and Harry. Here we have what I feel about it. They feel like they're in control. They feel that there is a balance between what they have to do and how they want to sort of ensure that their life, particularly for their family, is as real and as possible. So it felt honest if you're talking. It felt honest if you're talking about it, and I think that's what sort of comes out from this, and this is where people really connect with something now, particularly under the glare of modern media, that we can actually immediately feel there is something real about something. Where you look at this, you think, well, what's a game? What's the game the others are playing?
You immediately talk about the authenticity, and I remember just before the weekend, William was in Elephant and Castle in South London, and he went to a community centre. Have you seen the footage where William's walking down a pathway, and it's a long walk for the photographers to get the picture of William attending this event, long way down a path, and the security guards, there's a couple of barriers, and an incredible woman comes across. And if you've seen the footage, she comes across like shouting, calling out to William, gives him a big hug, said, it's the Prince, it's the Prince. And it's those little moments where you go, yeah, this isn't staged, this isn't PR, this is actually them kind of being their authentic selves.
Yeah. And very relatable as well. And, and I think you see that in the King as well. I wonder if it sort of coincides with, and I think it does, with the death of the late Queen. And with that, I think, we're always going to have this moment of transition with the monarchy, but I think in so many ways, it feels more modern. It feels more relatable. And, you're right. You look at William and Kate and they look really happy. I mean, you and I have done enough of these royal tours. We know they're hard work. I'm sure you're knackered because the schedule is full on, right? But I've been away with you to the other side of the world with them, and they make these tours almost look like a second honeymoon. No, they look happy to be away. They're happy to be engaging with members of the public. And this is the first we've seen of them as a couple in, over a year now. And I think there's something very reassuring about that. They are a great partnership. They're a brilliant team. They're clearly very happy. And you know what? They're doing really good work. They've condensed and focused their work, their charitable initiatives, and you sort of feel like this is a couple on a mission. They're on a mission to do some really good, important work, and they're doing it.
At the end of the day, this episode draws a harsh but clear line between those who represent the monarchy and those who still exploit it. Harry, Meghan, and Andrew may have walked away from royal responsibilities, but they haven't walked away from royal privileges. And the public? They're catching on. As the monarchy modernizes, one couple is rising as the symbol of stability, while others look more and more like they're just cashing in. So what do you think? Should Harry and Meghan stop using their titles completely? Is Prince Andrew done for good? Or is the monarchy strong enough to outlast them all? Smash that like button, subscribe for more no-fluff royal analysis, and drop a comment below. Should royals who step down lose the right to their titles permanently? Let's talk about it.